haven't watched the previous tutorial videos, please make sure that you start with the basic concepts of mediation, then go to assumptions, descriptive assumptions, like you can see event transformation, pattern analysis, and final, at the end, come to watch this tutorial video. Mediation analysis in SPSS is very easy, very straightforward, and much easier than JASP, I can say, in some aspects that you will see and notice actually. But before that, it needs just a preparation step before that, because mediation analysis in SPSS is used based on an additional program called process macro, or process macro. And this needs actually to be downloaded and installed on your SPSS. So it's not installed on SPSS by default, but it's very easy, and I will share the links. You can see the links in the file that you found the recording of this video, and I will it will be shared with you, so don't worry about that. And it's very easy step. So you just follow the link, you download the process app, and based on the version of your SPSS, you will receive a very clear guidelines on the website that mention that 1, 2, 3, like what to do. A few simple steps, and in a matter of like a couple of minutes, you can add the process macro in your SPSS. When it's installed successfully, if you come to regression, you can see that here. And also, I strongly recommend you download the version 4.2 of this, not version 5, because version 5, that is also called beta, has some complexities. Some of the options like standardized coefficients are removed. You need to use syntax for that. So actually it's not easy to work with the version 5, although that is newer. So it's ironic, but I recommend, like my version that I'm using here, use the version 4 of that. You have two options only in that website, version 5 or 4. I recommend using version 4 as it's much easier to work with. So now you want to do mediation analysis. I go to regression, process here. As you see, it's very straightforward. It's very simple. Even doesn't need tutorial. I would say you even do try and fail, you can understand. But just for interpreting the results I provide in this mediator. So the first thing that you want to do is specifying the model number. Don't forget these steps, otherwise you will receive error. So Hayes process has a lot of like number of models that some of them do mediation or moderation at the same time. Some of them only do moderation and different type of mediation. But all of your projects would fit best for model 4. That means the model 4 means that you have just mediation, not any moderator factor, and also means that you have just want to see a simple mediation effect. So that is the best that we have. If we have also one mediator that we want, or we have, or maybe we have parallel mediators, but for your projects, you have usually only one mediator. So model 4 would be the best for you. Another thing is the default is okay, like confidence interval is 95, but for bootstrap sample, although 5,000 bootstrap is okay, but usually the studies, the published papers put it on 10,000. Because 10,000 bootstrap means more number of simulation that can make your results more robust and less biased. So it reduces the possibility of any bias if you put it in 10,000. So, but not more. So 10,000 is the maximum actually that used in published papers. Some publications use 5,000, some publication 10,000. And usually the results is not very different, but just in case, I would suggest that you can put it in 10,000, but it's not any must, it's not like mandatory that to be 10,000. And yeah, I think everything else should be okay. If you want, if you have any problem with assumption violation that bootstrap intervals can check it, you can put it here. But even if you don't put it here, your bootstrap will be already included. So as you know, I put y variable is always dv. So I put my dv here. And x variable is my IV that I put it here. So I name it as IVDV to be clear. And M, like imagine whatever that is as my mediator here. If I have covariates, I include it here. Otherwise, I just leave it to be there. So let's first try it without covariates. And about the options also, not that much that you need to change, but if you want to, you can like include total effects. That is actually the important part to take, and also standardized effects. That's all. Yes, just in total effect and standardized effects, you will have the complete picture of all the statistics that you need, and then continue. And everything is ready, just okay. As you can see now, the mediation analysis actually is just a bunch of two regression models that have included some further adjustment in addition to a bootstrap contribution, in a bootstrap calculation. So let's start. For example, if first you can see the description of your model, like your Y is your DV, your X is your IV, and M is mediator. Your sample size that can show it here. This is the model summary. What you need, I mean, although it's a complete regression output that you see what you don't need to report all of this. What you need to report is that you can consider the first mediation model is about your path A. Like when your IV predicting your mediator, you see outcome variable is mediator, and your IV is actually the variable that we call that IV. So what you need to report from this table is not, you are not interested in R squared or R here because we are just reporting mediation, not regression analysis. What we are interested in coefficient of IV is on a standardized coefficient that IV predicting mediator. So this one is important here. A standard error also is important to report either in your table or in your text. T is important because it's the measure for significance. And here, these four variables and also confidence intervals. So you need two coefficient, a standard for this row only, for IV coefficient, a standard error, T, p-value, and exact p-value is highly common to report in your tables, and confidence intervals. So these are the statistics you need to report. All of this together can actually show that my IV significantly predict my mediator. That is the first condition of my mediation model that is met actually. I can see that my IV, the first step, can significantly predict my mediator in a negative way. That means that it's a negative relationship. And this was on a standardized coefficient, but this is a standardized coefficient or beta. It can a standardized coefficient. The function of that is that it can show me the amount of the effect size, like the strength of the relationship. I cannot conclude the strength of my relationship based on a standardized effect, but I can conclude that based on a standardized effect that is 18, that's a small effect. So it's a small effect, but it's significant. And so the second model, regression model, is include path B and path C prime together. So it's one regression model, but actually include both two paths as two remaining direct paths in your mediation model. So first, it can include that how your IV can predict your DV when it's accounted for when the effects of mediator is controlled. And the second row can show that how your mediator can predict your DV, that is path B, that can actually, after controlling for the effects of IV. So this row is about path C prime. This row is about path B. And so what you need to report again for your path B, that how your mediator predicts your DV, you need to see like on a standardized coefficient is 0.53 and it's a negative relationship, a standard error, T significant, so it is a significant effect, and confidence interval. You need to report this row. And this is actually the coefficient for this one. That means that the mediator has a medium effect actually on your DV after controlling for the effect of IV. So the pure effect of your mediator on your DV is a medium effect that is actually a considerable one, and it's also negative. Now, how about path C prime, like the effects of your IV, direct effect of your IV on your DV when it's controlled for the effect of mediator? So that means that the pure effect of your IV on your DV without after removing the effect of a mediator is 0.35. It's on a standardized effect, a standard error you need to report, T you need to report, and p-value and confidence interval. So this is a significant effect. And again, you see that it's also a medium effect almost. That your IV, the pure direct effect of your IV on DV after controlling for mediator is a medium effect. So also this is this. So when you come here, like total direct and indirect effect, this sort of repetition of the previous part. So if you got the statistic in the way that I mentioned there, you can ignore this total effects or direct effects here because it's the same as what I mentioned above. It's just presenting that in the new column. So like you see that the total effects here is the same statistics that you have here. And also the direct effects of X and Y, like IV and DV is also the same as what you could see in here. Like for example, it's a 35, like was the indirect, like this row that you can see, everything is the same that here isolated for confidence interval or anything. So just repetition of that. So if you report it from in the same way that I mentioned that, we can just double check it here because it's clear that you didn't pick a wrong row. And But what is new here is the indirect effects, that is about your mediation effects. As you can see, in the Hayes process model, we don't have p-value for indirect effects because the indirect effect is assessed based on bootstrapped confidence intervals. So we don't have p-value. So how we can get the p-value? So first, let's see what is the effect. The effect on a standardized effects is 0.07, and the standardized effect is 0.06. We usually don't, I know that it seems like a very small effect, but we usually don't interpret the effect size for indirect effects based on the common interpretations of effect size. There is another way we consider the proportion of these effects that I will explain that in the group supervision, that we are more interested in that how much the proportion of the total effects is explained with these indirect effects. That is usually a considerable amount, like can be 10%, 20%, that is a considerable amount. So although it seems too small, but it is an important actually amount of indirect effects. So how I can see that it's significant or not significant is based on bootstrap confidence intervals. If the bootstrap confidence interval does not include zero, that means that sorry, the bootstrap confidence interval are here, these two that you see, CI confidence interval is at the end. If these two levels are not including zero, that means that this indirect effect is significant. For example, you see that they are both positive. So that means that they don't include zero, either the upper level or lower level does not include zero. So both are positive. They started after zero, both of them. So that means that I can consider this as a significant effect. The same for the standardized effect, almost always is consistent. So, but however, if both of them were negative, still I could say that my indirect effect was significant, because if both of them are negative, still they don't consider zero because both of them are below zero. However, if one of them is minus and one of them is positive, then I can say that it's not significant because it starts below zero, but it will end after zero, above zero. So that means that in that case, it wouldn't be significant. But here it is significant because both values are positive of my confidence interval. And because it doesn't include zero, so it is significant. What you need to report in your results section is just the effects, the indirect effects, and also the confidence intervals. You don't need to, the standard error is not important that much. And but you can, if you want also to include that, you can, but usually that would be enough and you can report it in the text. And yeah, and also this on a standard as the that so I explained that. So nothing else you need. That's all you need actually for your mediation analysis. And I will explain more about some examples of how to report it in your results section as well. But let's see if we include covariate, how does it change? For example, imagine that I want to include gender, like and maybe more than one. Maybe I include two covariate, marital status and gender as covariate. I just simply put it in the covariate section and okay, that's it, as simple as that. And everything would be the same if it's not appear even in my main result. You don't even need to report anything about like the statistics of covariance. You just need to mention that the results of your mediation analysis is based on after controlling the covariance. As you can see, I have DV, IV, and I have two covariates that are listed here. So everything would be the same, just as this table that you don't need necessarily to report that actually for in your tables. You can just say that your results is after controlling for covariate. But here it actually can show that if your covariates have a significant effects or not. For example, you can see that the call background here actually had a significant effects on my model. So it was a good decision to control that. And I can see marital status also had a nearly significant, marginal significant impact relationship with my model, especially the first step that IV controlling DV. But I don't need necessarily to report that because it's not an actual path actually that I want to consider. So I still, in my main tables, I can just report this DV, but I can say that this is with controlling the effects of covariate. That means that this coefficient that you see here is already adjusted based on controlling the effect of called and marital status. So that means that you don't have to worry about this significant relationship that you see here because it's already controlled in the model. The same here, like the second steps, you can see that called and marital status did not have any significant impact on my DV. They had a significant relationship with my mediator, almost significant with my mediator, but not by my DV. That means that if I wanted to control them as covariate or not, it wouldn't affect this step of my mediation analysis. However, this affects a small effects or coefficient that they have But still you can see actually on, yes, when it's a standard, it's very small effect that they had. So still it would be controlled. Again, my path B, my path C prime that is here, and path B still is adjusted for these small effects. That means that I can rest assured that this coefficient for my IV and mediator is accounted for the potential effects of covariates. And the same for indirect effects as well. I can know that now, make sure that my mediation effects, when I say that my mediation effect is significant because it doesn't include zero, I can say that the whole model, either the results that I presented for direct or indirect effects, I can just have a statement in my results section saying that there was no actually saying that this mediation model, the result of mediation model, is actually with controlling age and it was called and marital status as covariates. If you want to be very, specific about that and the result that you can maybe also include these two rows for in your tables as well, like showing that the relationship, the direct effects of called on your DV, and also have another path row in your table, like the direct effects of, for example, call to mediator, but it's not necessary to necessarily report that because you are not going to consider them as a real pathway. You just control them, no matter disregarding of their being significant or not being significant in your model. So that was as easy as that. So in summary, if you include covariates, you can report everything in the same way that I mentioned for the previous version, like not including any covariate, but just you need to have an additional statement saying that the table, like a note you can present in the table, for example, saying that the results are accounted for, after results are adjusted based on controlling age and marital status as covariates. Or alternatively, we can have additional rows and showing the exact relationship that this covariates had with each step of your mediation analysis. So that was all for space S. As you see, it's very simple and straightforward.